This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. This week we are going to have another lively conversation. This one was recorded a while back at Magic at the Beach at the Charles Bach Theater, Wonders Theater, there at Myrtle Beach. And this was a conversation with Charles Peachock. I don't often get to speak with jugglers. In fact, if you go back and do a search through the Magic Word Podcast, I think you'll probably only find about 3 other jugglers with whom I have spoken over the years, and so they're kind of a rare breed, and there have been people who have done some juggling in their lives, but may not necessarily be as known for doing juggling, like Pat Hazel, for an example. But anyhow, this gentleman not only is a great juggler, he is a marketing guru as well as an entrepreneur. He is the one who had created Audio Ape, which is a way of interfacing with a variety of sound systems so you can use remote control switches with your music. If you have not used music in the past, you probably are missing out on a major part of improving your show. Let me just leave it at that. This is not intended to be a commercial message for Audio Ape or anything else for that matter, other than just to encourage you to think about using music and how important that it will be in your act. But we only talk about it for a little at the end of this conversation. We really have an interesting conversation in the front part in talking about working on cruise ships as well as what it's like on America's Got Talent and his journey, because he was one of the first jugglers who had gone as far as he did in the earlier years. Also, Penn and Teller, Foolish, other kinds of quote reality shows in competitions and things like that. And again, working cruise ships and working on the streets and just juggling in general. He's a fascinating gentleman, as I mentioned, who is not only a performer but also an entrepreneur and creator and marketer, and also this week he is our guest. So please welcome Mr. Charles Peachock here on The Magic Word. There's been somebody I've been wanting to talk with for quite a while because he is not only a performer, but also a creator. Many magicians are creators, but I mean of something that that he creates that a lot of magicians use. And that is Audio Ape. Every magician who's on stage or a parlor should be having his or her own kind of music and have control of it. Working cruise ships, wherever you're going to be working, there's nothing better than having your own sound system. And this guy we're talking with today is the creator of Audio Ape. And we'll talk about how that got created and some of the other things that are some alternatives, but this is not to be considered an ad. I really wanted to talk with Charles Peachock because he is also a juggler. His main avocation is working performing on stage, but also he's kind of the go-to guy for Disney. They love him on Disney Cruise Lines, which is why he lives in Orlando. So he can kind of go at a moment's notice if they say, hey, we need you, like tomorrow. You can get over there. Please welcome my friend Charles Peachock. Hey, Charles.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks so much for having me.
So glad to have you here then as well. So you're in Orlando, and have you been there for a long time?
I moved down about 8 years ago from Ohio.
Yeah. Where about in Ohio? Were you in Columbus? Or?
No, I was in Northeast, so I was in Kent, Ohio specifically. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of born and raised there, and I was traveling so much ever since I was 19. I've been doing ships on the main stage and show. I didn't really feel like I needed to leave because I was gone all the time. So it was nice and comfortable. Friends and family were there. But then, I hung out with fellow artists, other musicians and things of that ilk. And, so when I kept performing, I kept growing my performance career, and they started plugging it into the 9-to-5 jobs and getting families and stuff. So we no longer ran in parallel, we still loved each other.
They were kind of leaving magic behind and entertainment. And
I was just,
you were sticking with it.
I was Peter Pan in Neverland. I was like stuck.
What was your passion? Why did you, I guess obviously passion is the word, but I mean.
Scott, it first started, actually, it's so funny that I started off as a magician. My interest was magician. First time on stage was magic. I had a mirror box. box and dove pan, and I did a talent show in 7th grade. And then I liked it.
Did you win?
No, I liked it. And I liked the attention that magic gave you. I was the youngest child and I was shy. So that it was a good outlet. Just so many people have that story in magic. And then I like card work and things like that, but I never really did much with it. And then, I started up juggling, and I just took to it like a fish to water. And I just loved the fact that I could just disappear into a gym and just work for 2 hours and, watch this thing slowly grow. And I think I like the physical side of it too, like the actual physical work that went into it. And, I just love not to have to, go out and buy a trick or have to do this or learn that. It was just like you could just go and woodshed and get better. And that was my, I love doing that.
But juggling is something that is almost like an apprenticeship in which someone has to teach you, as opposed to magic. You can go buy a book or whatever.
I don't think so at all.
No?
I think there's a lot more autonomy in learning when it comes to juggling. You definitely, as you
learn
get
the basics from somebody.
You do, and you can learn from the book. Like there's the Complete Klutz was like one of the most popular books.
Yeah.
And millions of copies were sold, and it came with 3 square bean bags, and that's how so many people learned. And then there was the Complete Guide to Juggling. There was it was almost in the same. When you go to the library, was it 7-4? What was it? What's the number?
I know what you mean. I can't remember.
Dave Williamson used to always say it in his show too when I worked with him. And I remember, this was right next to the juggling book. So it was the hobbyist section in the library, and you would go there, and there were some juggling books. Most libraries had them. And so I definitely was ravenous and absorbed all they had. And then it was VHS tapes. So you could watch VHS tape of the juggling competitions. Back then it was the IJA. I think that still exists. And you'd watch the juggling videos, and I just wore those tapes out.
Did you join? Did you join that?
Yeah. And I competed too. I won in 97. I competed in 94, 92, and then I won in 97.
I think Alan Howard edited the magazine for a while.
Absolutely. And Alan was somebody I looked up to. He was at our local juggling club in Akron.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he was like one of the few pros that I was exposed to when I first started juggling. And then, and so, basically I love that art form and definitely threw myself into it. My mom likened it to me joining a cult. I was like, she was just like, that's all you did, and it's practice till my hands bled.
Well, juggling is something that takes a lot, and certainly if you're using clubs. I remember when I was first learning to juggle clubs as well, just my fingernails were bleeding and my knuckles. Yeah, you said it is knuckle busting for sure. Pat Hazel, I'm assuming. So Pat Hazel used to do a lot of juggling. He is a comedian now. He had written for Seinfeld, and he was at Magic Live a couple of times, and he was interviewed on Magic Live. But anyhow, I met him in Omaha many years ago, and when I moved to Omaha, he had moved to L.A., but he was telling me about how when he was learning to juggle that he appreciated jugglers much more than magicians because they actually had to practice. You can't just buy a balls and do a show tonight like you can with a magic trick.
So Martin Lewis, I work with him a lot, the late, great Martin Lewis.
Yes.
And he told me, because he wanted to be a juggler first. And, he was practicing and everything. And later in life, he told me one time backstage, he's like, that I think he was, is an over exaggeration, but it was really sweet of him to say, he said the hardest thing in magic the easiest thing in juggling is still harder than the hardest thing in magic. He said the hardest move that I know is the Erdnase, like a center
diagonal palm shift.
Yeah. And he's like, it's like when you, put it up against juggling, how much time it takes. It's a stark difference.
Yeah.
It
takes so much practice, I think, to become a juggler. And Pat actually, lived in an apartment that had been an oxygen warehouse, oxygen manufacturing warehouse.
Okay.
So it had high ceilings because it would have these tanks, that would go across on these pulleys and everything. So we had a place to practice in juggling and everything. And he would juggle on the streets and do some things. And also, but he was one who really first impressed me, and he introduced me to some jugglers and some different, and that whole world. And it certainly is a world in and of itself.
It is. And it's
David Diebel is another good friend, who's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the fact that he had injured himself, and then he
morphed it into, he really started to throw himself into the comedy side of things, and just really clever stuff, very unique bits and things that he could do Still, he could do a lot of manipulation still. He just couldn't do the technical juggling that he used to be able to. And so it shifted him into a space. And you know what? He ended up in a space that no one else occupied. And that's always a good place to be.
Isn't it?
It
yeah.
is.
Yeah. Unfortunately, but fortunately. Yeah. As it turned out then for him.
Yeah.
So you continued to learn to juggle, as you said, as you were young. And that was kind of the path you decided, leaving magic in the background. So, but part of your show right now, do you do magic as part of the show then too? Or?
And I've thought about it before. And some people say, oh, you should add it. Here's the rub that I see, Scott. It's like when I came up with this term. Magic looks like it's happening, but it's really not. Juggling looks like it's not happening, but it really is. They're kind of a yin and yang thing. And the other thing is that I would worry that if I started doing magic tricks, then when I'm doing something juggling wise, people wonder if there's some kind of trick to me doing it or something. And so you blur the lines there. And also audiences I found don't want somebody with two different art forms. They want to be able to put them in a box and be like, okay, this is an acrobat. Okay, this is a singer. All right, this is a drummer. It's like I've seen magic acts like do singing and they're very talented, but it's just the audience can't make that connect. And all of a sudden they feel the one or both of them are disingenuous. That's not really who they are. And it is very fascinating to me. And so I thought I would run into that. And the other problem of people thinking what I'm doing is actually an illusion, and it's not. So I've always kept them segregated, and I never did both of them.
And when you're on Disney, do you do a magic act separate?
No,
You don't do magic? You put that in your back
magic
view
is
mirror?
Not in my bag at all. I like to hang out with magicians, and I like to do chop stuff, and I like to trade tricks. And I'm very, I know a lot about magic, and I love the art form, but I don't do any of it on stage. It's just for friends and things like that. You know, I carry like Hundi,
Yeah, right.
And I couple tricks on my phone, and that's about it. It's just
you can prove yourself. It's like, I don't need to go any further. I'm a magician. You proved your chops.
Yeah.
You do a couple of those things. My son did the same thing.
But the thing I'm jealous about with magicians is they can create a moment just right there on the spot, and it's so impactful because it's a one-on-one thing.
Whereas you got to grab a salt shaker and something else.
And then it's always not good because they're not my props. I don't have the right lighting. There's this low ceiling. It's just my art form has to have certain conditions to really showcase my life's work.
Sure.
Whereas a magician, you don't really need that to create an impact.
I have never heard, although this would be a good Saturday Night Live skit, to have a restaurant juggler going from table to table.
Yeah.
Hey, let me borrow your fork and your knife, and I'm going to juggle this in your plate and whatever. So yes, you have to. You can't do that close up or walk around. It's either for street or stage, basically.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about it. It's like it's not an intimate thing. It's like you stand up in front of all these people and you hit this incredible thing.
Yes, and
you're able to execute under this pressure, and there's something about that. And magic, it's just like you can be personal. It could be one-on-one, and that's sometimes the most powerful stuff.
That's true, because it's very intimate, and it's something that could be a borrowed item from the person, and you do some magic with it.
Yep.
Do you ever do that with people when you bring them up on stage, to borrow something from them? I mean, like, can I borrow your bowling ball? Or...
Yeah, right. The Karamazovs famously did a thing where the audience started to get to know bring an object, and so
really?
Yeah, and so they would juggle those objects, and it was very fun and cute, and I thought it was a very clever idea, but that's their idea. No, I haven't done anything that. I juggle a kid though, so I'll basically toss him back and forth from hand to hand while juggling balls in the air. And so that's fun.
I have heard a story. What was that about? Somebody who was going to top at their baby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think somebody talked him out of it at the last minute. It was,
and that was something actually that was one last effort I did in combining magic and juggling. So I was going to juggle a gun. This is back a long time ago, and guns didn't have that bag of a
guns and cigarettes.
It was going to be a gun and a bullet and an apple. And the way I was going to do it is I was going to juggle all three, and then
vanish the bullet.
So no, yeah, I would catch the gun and then flip it open, like the revolver open. Right. And as I did that, the top, it would catch the bullet, and I would first show the revolver empty, and then I would move like my finger over the chamber, which would basically rub off like a Sharpie or any kind of thing. And then it would look like I just caught the bullet in there. And then the apple was going to have like a thread and a weight. So I could throw it up in the air and it would split in half. And so I'd throw the apple, then shoot the gun, and it looked like it would explode.
So put some thought into this.
I did.
And
I started engineering it too, actually. And I was just, no, it was just too much. And then I started traveling, and it's just like, bringing a gun like onto a ship or something like that, that's a whole thing in the deal. And it's like travel restrictions. And so, yeah, I never pursued it. But hey, if somebody's listening to this and they want to take it and run with it, go for it.
Go for it. I had, when I was on a ship, there was a routine of jumbo sidekick. And that is, in the finale, it has like a gun that shoots. And well, actually.
Is it the table?
Correct.
Yeah.
The table, right. And when I do it in clubs, it's great.
Yeah.
But I can't do that on a ship. So I brought one of these flash bang wands.
Yeah.
And so that way I thought, okay, give it to the volunteer. You just shake it at it. Perfect. Yeah. But, the negative comment that I got that on the card was, it felt like a children's birthday party because this person was having to play with the wand instead of anyhow. It's like, okay.
Can't win.
You can't win. That's true. But I thought that's a very clever idea. I like that. But did you ever work in the streets? You said earlier that you haven't.
Yeah. So when you first start out and you're not getting that many gigs, you don't have that many opportunities. Yeah. I remember like crashing like, festivals or something like that. And you pass the hat and you make some money. I don't think I ever officially got hired to be a street performer. It was always just jump in and crash.
Busking, yeah.
And you could do that more easily back then. We're talking like, 25 years ago or more, and nobody really cared that much. In fact, they'd be like, I remember one of them, we kind of crashed, and then all of a sudden the radio announcers came around us and were talking about how you got to come down and see these guys. And now all of a sudden we're part of the promotions and we're not even getting paid.
You're not getting paid. Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. That's kind of like I remember Paul Diamond had a pamphlet out called It Takes Guts, Damn It, in which he was telling people to be a trade show magician. If you're trying to get into trade shows, attend a trade show and just start doing some magic in front of the booth. And then before long, if they like it, you say, hey, well, it's going to cost you. I'll stay here. But in a similar kind of a thing, you just eventually they're going to tell the
bookers,
hosting, the bookers that, hey, if you want me, it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody's got to start somewhere. And the thing like with magic and with juggling certainly is flight time. And you want to see what works and what doesn't. And also the way that your audience will give you lines. If you're on stage, you're not getting lines thrown at you the way you probably do when you're in the street.
Right. That's so true. And that definitely happens on the street. You're working without a net, so to speak. And as my act refined and everything, the nuances needed to be shine through, whether it be a quick facial expression or like, under my breath, like joke or something like that, And I wanted to make it more produced and nuanced, and I felt like the street would not be a place for that.
Because that'd be more for hack lines, I guess, than the street?
No, it's just, you just need to be loud and over the top,
in order to keep the audience.
Exactly.
You
need to have a huge energy, and I just didn't want to have that. I just wanted something that I could change gears, and it could be low energy, it could be high energy. And that's the thing with my show. I really feel like I always want to be changing gears. I want to do something artistic, and then I want to do something with a comedy volunteer, then I want to do something dangerous, and I want to do something technical, and then I want to do something that involves technology. And so I move through these stages and I do pretty quickly, like no routine's much more than 3 minutes long. And I feel like keeping people's mind shifted like that keeps them in that state of hypnosis that you want, that trance that you want to put your audience in, where they forget about their bills, they forget about the problems with their kids.
Good point.
And that's your job as an entertainer, to
put them in that
zone. And they don't think it's like, when's the show going to be over? Why is he
looking at their watch?
We don't want them in that zone. So I move along, if I do a show that's 50 minutes long, like I'll have 16 or 17 routines, I move through the show, and I think that's something I like doing. And I think it serves me well.
So you maintain a high energy, but you just have different emotions that they're going through.
Yes.
Interesting. So when one of the things I forgot to mention up front is you were one of the finalists, as I recall, on America's Got Talent. Is that right? So in doing that, I assume that someone, had seen you, or they called you, or did you solicit yourself? Or
no, I didn't solicit myself. They had been asking me for a couple years.
Yeah.
The show.
Did they find you just through your website, or someone see you? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what happens. They have a very wide net.
Boy, do they? I mean, they called me also.
Yeah.
And I have no in game.
They'll repeatedly call
yes.
people. So they definitely have an outbound marketing that's very strong.
Yeah.
So when they were asking me for a couple of years, it was just like I didn't want to do it because jugglers were really getting like thrashed on that show. And no juggler had done well.
They'd done well.
And so I was just like, yeah. And then I had a manager at the time, And she kind of was like, look, man, there is no more Tonight Show spots. There are no more variety on TV. There's no more, there is no more TV for jugglers. Even magicians, it's really tough unless you have a special and have a name. She's like, this is it. And I was just like, she's like, if you don't do well, you're not famous. You may be famous in the juggling world a little bit, but it's not going to hurt your,
hiring you.
It's not going to hurt your career. People say that it's going to hurt their career, but that's a reason not to take the risk. And it is a risk. It can be very, it's quite humiliating. It's like you're running a risk of embarrassing yourself on national television in front of your peers.
Even as I understand, if you do a great job, they may edit it to make you look bad.
It's all in the editing room. They can do whatever they want with it. And I've seen acts get standing ovations. Then when I see the episode come out, they're getting booed off stage. They can literally make that happen through editing. And so you're completely at the mercy of that. But like I said, my manager was just like, this is it. And she's like, all you got to do is get like one good clip, a couple good quotes, and then you just put that in your promo and all of a sudden it's great. And you get to wear the badge on America's Got Talent. A lot more happened than I expected. That's all I was going on there for, is like the clip and the quote. And then, I was on that 6 episodes. I set the record, like for a juggler for appearances.
Wow. Good for you.
And it was quite a journey. I'm in a full page in People magazine. It was something that I never expected, any juggler could do, much less lastly myself, It
was a picture, like a full page picture?
It was like about 2/3 of the picture. Yeah. Somebody told me I was in People magazine. I was just like, what? I mean, I knew I was on the show, so I figured it was like all the finalists or something like that.
How many years ago was this?
It was 2011.
Okay. Back when the magazines where people were buying.
Yeah, actually, and it was actually one of the biggest selling ones. It was the one with Kate, her big wedding spread or whatever, and when she got married to
Prince.
Prince. So yeah, somebody told me I was in there. I was just like, what? And I'm driving to the grocery store and I'm just like, what could be in there? And I'm like leafing through and it's just like, I just see this full picture of me and I'm just like, and it's like the quote's like, Charles Peachock wows judges. And
was that kind of surreal when you see something like that?
I kept like looking at the cover and looking inside, like flipping back and forth.
I had to pick up another issue. Wait, maybe somebody's pranking me here.
So there were moments like that. There's a lot of really cool moments,
So when you went up, let me go further about the 6 times you kept coming back. I mean, you thought you were just going to be one and done and have a nice clip.
I did.
But then the next time, I mean, how does a juggler step up? I mean, I remember with David and Dania, after about the second time, they said, well, you're still just changing outfits. Right. I mean, it's just different colored dress. But
and that was something too that like, it's difficult, like, cause a singer can just pick a new song each time,
Correct.
And even as a magician, I mean, I don't want to say it's not difficult, but there's a lot to choose from.
Sure.
Jugglers, there's not them. And it's not, you have to make it, you have to produce it so it looks like something that's never been done and it's playing huge,
True.
And so these sets that I created were only one I had done before was the glow routine. And that was my opening one where I do like all LED props and I have like an LED suit and it's all choreographed. And that was the only routine I had done.
Those LED suits really play well on AGT because it looks great on TV.
And that was before it had been done.
Oh, you were the first.
I was first. But here's the other thing. There was an act that did it, I Illuminate, and they were on my year. So we both appeared at the same time.
And they moved forward too. I remember them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was funny too, because after their episode aired first, and then my episode aired like 2 episodes later, and everybody was like, this juggler stole like their act. And it's just like, they don't understand. This was all filmed 6 months ago. And nobody knew anybody. So,
right.
But it's funny.
How funny.
So anyway, I opened with that one. And then I did a big fire set in Vegas. Then I did the piano, which was on a scale that nobody had ever done it. Most people do it just on the floor. I built it into a grand piano.
Oh, that's right. Where you just kind of throw the balls and they play the piano. Right.
But I built it on top of a grand piano, and then I had a live band also.
And you stand on top of the piano?
First I stand on the stool. Then the thing, I was on a turntable and rotated around. Then I played it backwards, and it was just this huge production. It was the riskiest thing. It was so. There's so many things that could have gone wrong, but that's the thing. You don't want to look back and be like, man, if I would have just gone for it,
Sure.
I went for it. Every single set, I was just like, how am I going to pull this off?
But if you would have succeeded and gotten a lot bigger show, then you'd have to do that every night.
Well, that's okay. because then I'm ready for it and I've practiced it and I performed it and it's been proven. Doing it and it's just the most high pressure situation, doing a routine you've never performed before. And that's like being held together by threads. It's absolute insanity, but you don't want to look back and be like, I should have gone for it. I went for it and it worked out.
And worked okay.
Yeah.
And moved you forward.
Moving forward.
And so each time you had to step it up, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so did you have consultants helping you, or is this all out of your own brain?
And I'm sure anybody listening to this and who's been on national TV, especially in these shows, know that once you're on the show, everybody wants to help you.
Interesting. They contact you.
No, if you have an expert that you know or somebody that can help you out or
as
help
a
you build
director
something,
or consultant,
they just see that their friend or somebody they know is on this huge stage and they want to be part of it.
I see.
It's really cool, the way that happens. I had my fire team, they were Emmy-winning stunt people that the guy on the video with me, he drove Knight and Kit, the car for all the years, and he won multiple Emmys, and so they came and just helped me like out of their own and enthusiasm for me doing well in the show. And I found that, and then my backing band was the guy who makes one of the best guitar pedals in the world, his old friend from Ohio. And he basically flew out. I had to fly them out. I didn't want anybody to pay out of pocket, but everybody gave me their time. They were very, very generous with their time and everything. And because they wanted to be part of it, they wanted to see me do well and they wanted to be part of it. So that was a fun part of it.
That was a good experience then for you, even though you didn't go forward. I mean, each week, were you thinking, well, I'm not going to make it? Or at some point you're thinking, oh, I hope I move forward. I mean, you could start to see the finish line.
I never, I was like, it was so much further than I ever expected. So anything was a win, you know what I mean? Like going that far, it's just like, whatever. I've already gotten way more than I ever expected. And some of the most successful acts, aren't winners. In fact, some of them got flamed. Like, Lindsey Sterling would be a perfect example. Lindsey Sterling has a full touring show and huge artists, like plays arenas and concert halls, like, 3,000, 5,000, and sells them out. And she opens with a video of when she first was in the finals and Pierce just shreds her, just absolutely tears her to ribbons. Yeah. And they kick her out like in the first round of the finals.
Wow.
And she plays that tape before she goes on stage. And the whole theme of the show is don't listen to what other people tell you. Wow. Yeah.
What a story.
Yeah. And so
you can really use that to your advantage.
Texas Tenors, like they're dear friends of mine, they didn't win, but they went on to they won Emmys for their PBS specials.
That's right. I remember.
Huge touring act. There's a lot of acts that didn't win and were massively successful. And the winners often, slide into, the ether.
Do you feel as if that now that your experience and your contract is over and everything and you can talk about it, do you feel that there was an agenda perhaps that either the producers or the judges or someone had of thinking, okay, well, we want to have a singer win this year? Or
oh, absolutely. There's writers on the show. You look at the thing and all the judges are being told, the director comes out and basically talks to all the judges before the next act goes out. And he basically is like, okay, you're going to like this one. You're going to say this, like you're not going to like his outfit. You're going to say he's really cute. Like, yeah, that's it. And they go out and they do that. And I think they have monitors and ears too. Aside from just doing that. And they're just trying to make good TV. And if you go on the show with the idea of like, I want to try and help them make good TV and I'm going to get some kind of footage out of it that I can basically show as a badge, and that's what the show's for. And it is super powerful. Like the footage that I use, there's a great story that I'll tell you real quick. So right after I did the show, I have this amazing footage. And so I play the footage before I'm on Royal Caribbean. I play the footage before I go out on stage. And, you start with this big wow as soon as you hit stage because they just watched all this stuff of you on TV, all this amazing footage. And then at the end, and the laughter's there and the applause is there. And then, you get a standing ovation at the end of the show. And then I go out and I go do pictures and I sign stuff and all that after the show. And so the meet and greet usually takes like 15, 20 minutes, and I'm doing pictures and everything. And then the second show, the video doesn't work. And so I come out and of course they're not like red hot when I come out, but by the end of the show, or even 10% or 20%, they're right at the temperature where I want them, and they were at last show. They're laughing the same amount. They're clapping the same amount. At the end, I get a standing ovation. It's like, yeah, see, I don't even need this footage. I go back. The big difference is I go back to do the meet and greet. Nobody's stopped.
There?
Nobody stopped. Nobody wanted to meet me.
Oh, because you weren't a quote celebrity.
It's exactly correct, Scott. And it was a very, very stark example of how powerful that footage is. And so that was always a funny lesson. And I didn't take it personally. I was just fascinated.
I've always thought that about if you say that you have performed as a magician for celebrities, let's say like Bruce Willis, and you happen to say that in your promo material, and when you're doing a card trick, you would say, well, here's a trick that Bruce Willis really liked.
Yeah.
The person subliminally might think, hey, I might be touching the same card that Bruce Willis just touched or something.
It's just everybody wants to be around something important.
Correct.
Or, it's it. It's the mindset it is. But yeah, that's the use of the footage. It's also, of course, to sell you to clients, and especially to people. The footage of AGT and national TV footage is most important when you're selling to uneducated buyers. You look like somebody who, the entertainment director for Royal Caribbean or they see 100 tapes a day. They know who's good and who's not by watching 1 minute of the thing, and they know who to hire. If you come into like a corporate conference and they're having their meeting about who they're going to bring in, they don't know anything.
You're right. It's the secretary or someone who happens to never given the job to hire someone.
They're so scared that they're going to book the wrong person that when they see national TV, they're like, well, we'll get this guy.
Must be good.
Yeah. I don't care how much he costs. Like, it's my job on the line. I got the budget. Let's just book him.
Right.
So that's where it comes in handy. That and the audience experience that, you play the footage before you go on stage, and then they feel after the show, all they say is, oh, he was on America's Got Talent, or he's on the Tonight Show. Like I have a number of TV appearances now. And so it's just powerful. They like it.
Well, for a long time, remember that David Copperfield used to open with showing his vanished Statue of Liberty.
And then he did the thing where it's like everybody said his name on TV. Like,
yes.
Right. It's like, why would somebody who's so legendary, maybe one of the most storied magicians in history, need an opening reel? Right. But it doesn't. It's just a reminder. It's just another way to get people in the mood and to just see how important he is.
That's true. It is a reminder. I think you're exactly right with that. So when you got up to a certain point and you were getting into the semifinals, was it something that was determined by the judges, or was it something that the country voted on through the internet?
Well, the votes were first, and then when I didn't go further, they had the opportunity, a judge could pick one of the acts to save.
Oh.
And Pierce, the guy who's supposed to hate all jugglers, he chose me. And that was the story. That was the flip of the story. And they always want to create like a, oh my gosh moment, or a, oh, I can't believe that happened moment.
I thought he liked you.
That's it. So, so he chose to bring me back, and then I went on to, keep going. But it was an incredible experience. Afterward, like I said, I used the footage the best I could, and it's been a wonderful tool. But,
Did they afterwards, even though that you didn't finish on the top, ask you to do something else? I mean, a lot of times they'll say, well, we want you to go on a 6 months, when the tour with the AGT tour or something.
If they were to do that, and I know you're contracted into that and everything, I would love to do that. If I were asked, I would have loved to do that. So many acts look at that contract and they're like, well, they can own my show, and they can, and they can do this, and they can do that. You know what? If they want to own your name, after that show, then you'll have done so well on that show that that's the value. You know what I mean? It's like, if you win the show, now they own you. Well, imagine never going on to the show. Which one would you rather have? And they don't want to own you. Very few times has somebody done well on the show or won the show and they're upset about the circumstances. Yeah. They just want to have that option in there.
Yeah.
And I really think it's a test of, conformity. Huh. It's like they just want you to be able to sign anything, and that you're going to play ball and fall in line.
Gotcha. Well, I think that it is a lot like also on Penn and Teller Fool Us. What they tell people when you're going on the P&T Fool Us show, they want you to realize that you're not going to try to win or try to fool them. You're here to have a good time, and you may or may not necessarily fool them.
Yeah.
And I think if you go with that kind of an attitude, as opposed to, man, I think this is a great trick. Well, to a degree, of course, you do have to have a great trick.
Yes.
But that's not the ultimate goal, is to fool Penn and Teller.
They're almost opposite models. Penn and Teller realized that magicians loathe the fact that they have to go on America's Got Talent or any of these shows where they pit everybody against each other and the writers are pulling all these strings and everything like that. They want to give them, there's no magician very few magicians, I should say, that ever were intimidated by going on Penn and Teller, because they know no matter what, they're going to get treated well. No matter what, they're going to get great quotes at the end of it, and that they're going to have a great experience, and they're not going to get humiliated.
And a great tape.
Exactly. And they're going to get treated well. And a tape, yes. And they're going to have B-roll and all this other amazing stuff. So that's why no magician, and all magicians have no problem going on that show. And they've structured it that way. They've structured a welcoming place for magicians to showcase their art.
It was kind of funny when I was at the 4F convention earlier this year, and they were introducing different people who were coming on and performing, and said, each time, this is a person who has been on Penn and Teller Fool Us. And they said, okay, we finally got someone who has not been on Penn and Teller Fool Us coming up next. Because it's getting to be, they've had, was their 10th or 11th year they're going on. It's like so many people. Yep. I know they're always looking for something new and new people to come on with something that's a non-card trick.
I have something that I think it could play there. So I might have some.
As a juggler?
It's a very unique thing. It's a juggling routine that, it twists into a magic trick. So, and I know one other juggling team has done it, Passing Zone.
Passing Zone. That's right.
And
I love those guys.
I have something, I do too. And, I have utmost respect for what they've done in the craft.
They went pretty far in AG2 too, as I recall.
They did. If you combine both their seasons, they appeared more than me because they were on later too.
Why did they come back? I mean, I didn't know, once you've gone on, I didn't know you can come back.
Be current. And I think also they kind of had a sweetheart deal.
Okay.
Where basically they were kind of guaranteed something.
Okay.
That's starting to happen more and more with those shows, because they realize like the acts, they need to keep getting better and better acts, and
if they have a proven act.
If they have an act that they really want on, and they're like, I'm not going to go on your show and get humiliated. I actually kind of have a name, But if they give them a sweetheart deal and promise them you're going to go this many rounds, it's all contracted, that's starting to happen more and more.
Did you have, and then I'm going to move on to something else, but did you have some sort of a sob story or backstory? What was
my manager at the time, she really wanted me to play, and I was just like, I can't do it. I can't. But it would have done really well. Of course, all that is always going to do nothing but help you.
It does.
But I wasn't there for that, and I felt like it was so disingenuous, and so I didn't play that card.
Okay.
I don't really regret not playing that card.
You think you could have gone further if you would have?
No matter what, it wouldn't have hurt.
Okay. Interesting. I mentioned that because there was a friend of mine who's one of these speed painters.
Yeah.
And he's really good. And he was on, and only just went on I guess passed the audition, but it was just like in front of the judges then. And he said that when they were asking him, well, tell us a little bit about yourself. And, if you got the $1 million, what would you do with it? And, will it change your life? And he said, well, probably not substantially, from the standpoint that I'm already doing these halftime shows for the NBA, and I'm traveling the world, and different corporations are hiring me to do this speed painting and everything. And I'm doing pretty well then. I don't know really how much more that's going to help me. And it's kind of like, okay, go ahead with your act.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you don't have a good story. And so it's like, beep, he didn't go forward.
Yeah. And it is funny too. And I messed up on that. When they asked me, I said, I'm a professional entertainer, and that's not the right answer. It's funny. The Texas Tenors were perfect. They had such a good answer prepped, and I should have
What'd they say?
So one of them said, like, he's unemployed. He's retired from $1 million contracting business.
Okay.
So he said I was employed, and the other one said he's a starving artist.
Yeah.
And I forget what the other one said. And I was like, oh, you guys, man. I was like, for one, this guy's a retired million, but that's how they set themselves up.
Sure. Depends how you just turn.
We're on here is our last chance to make it.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to hear a dramatic story. They want to root for an underdog.
They do. I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah. The
two things I think I'm getting out of what you were saying is, one, you want to be associated with a celebrity or kind of be near one. Another one is to, vote for the underdog, and so.
And honestly too, it's not just the underdog, Scott. It's like they feel that person is representing them. This person with, can kind of sing and is sitting on the couch watching him. They feel like that is their representative. That could be me.
Yeah. Right. Okay, now I want to go in a completely different direction and talking about Audio Ape, and that is something that you had developed. And we talked about this a little bit briefly before we started recording this, about some of the other kinds of things that have preceded that. And I assume that you had used other types of sound systems and then decided, well, it didn't have this or that, and then kind of tweaked it yourself.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what happened. It's like, my history. So I always like tweaked whatever it was I was using, whether it be my glow props or whether it be the remote system or whatever it was. And Kerry lived in my neighborhood. I met him later
Kerry
in my,
Pollack, by the way, we're talking about his wireless wizardry that he has.
Yeah. The godfather of show remotes.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yes.
And just such a sweetheart, such a good guy and such a brilliant guy. It was about 14 years ago or so, I got to finally meet him, and I'd heard so much about him. I was using his system. And so,
Showtech at that time?
I think he had, no, I didn't, I think it's MP3 Tech first.
Yep.
And then when he moved to the laptop,
the
laptop version, I moved to MediaStar, the laptop version.
Yeah.
And so, so when I first got to meet him, and he was just such a nice guy, and then we ended up being friends. And so I would, go out for wing night with him or go to his workshop, and he taught me a couple things too. And then, when he moved out of the space and sold his interest to, Permistic, and then there was a lull in the remote market. Nobody could buy a remote. There wasn't anything professional grade available at that time because Permistic was working on for 3 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, there was this huge gap. And I was friends with Carl Andrews, the guy who did the first iOS app.
Yep.
And we'd work together. And
I used that for a long time. And I still do show cues.
Yeah.
I love show cues.
So Carl had the cue, the first
show cues.
Yeah, the first iOS app. And so he was complaining about there's no good remote, this iJet thing. It's like causing more problems and make my app look bad. And I was just like, well, here's what you do. And I was like telling him how to develop it and test it with this and, Arduino and and then he's looking at me. He's like, why aren't you making this? And I'm just like, this is the first, I've only made money by throwing things in the air and catching them, hopefully. And so it's a bit of an imposter syndrome to step into a role like that. You're like, well, who am I, to do this? I talked to a couple of people who were close to me and they're like, why can't you be the guy?
Well, it sounds like, when you mention Arduino, most people don't even know what that is.
Right.
So you were a step ahead. Yes. Right there. And so I assume you know how to use all that.
Yeah.
So you were kind of tech savvy to begin with to a degree.
Yeah, I owned and operated and repaired pinball machines too. So I got a little bit of background in circuitry there and everything. And then I had a team of people that were making me custom props.
Right.
And so I already had a base of people that I'd hired that are experts. So I basically went ahead and I asked my team, I said, this is the idea. This is what I want to try and do. This is how I want to try and come at it. Can we do it? And then give me a budget for a prototype. And we did it. And then we're like, okay. And then I started manufacturing them. And I remember the first sale that came in. I was on the Celebrity Summit. And a sale came in and I was just like, oh my gosh, I made money without throwing things in the air. And so
passive income
is my first passive income. And then, it was funny because we all want to make our mark on the world and leave the world a better place or, influence or, lead. It's just like you want to help people basically. You want to make something that makes a difference. Mm-hmm. So that's what it was. Performing had always done that firsthand, with an audience, but audio ape actually, you have you affect less people, but it's a deeper, people were just ravenous. They were just like, this has changed the way I operate my show. Mm-hmm. I've never used a remote or this is the best remote I've used or whatever it was. And people, really, I made a positive impact on people and I made their lives easier or better. And that was good enough for me to keep going. I didn't make money for a long time because it was making mistakes and then of course the R&D and all this stuff like that. And,
plus you're still trying to balance or juggle the rest of your life and your shows. And I assume you had an agent that was working for you on that end.
Yeah, multiple agents.
Yeah. That's one good thing. So you're not having to book yourself.
I never had to book myself, luckily. And it's not something to brag about because you lose a lot of money by not doing that. But I just am terrible about selling myself and my show. I just,
your wheelhouse.
Yep. So I got into the remote space, had a huge learning curve between manufacturing and supply and shipping and customer services and help desk. And it's just it was a good, a good degree in, running a business and customer service. And so that was good.
Talking to Carl Andrews and Sean Pop, it seemed to be the two guys that were working with show cues. And if I had a question, they were always on the other end. And so you're right. As far as being the person that is the chief cook and bottle washer and having to do everything, you create it and you answer questions and you got calls from people all the time and emails. I mean, it has to be frustrating. I assume that this was also the next evolution because, again, that the way that Kerry had worked with his, again, the mini disc player and the Showtech and then MP3 player, et cetera, that each one kind of took advantage of newer technology.
Absolutely.
And I'm assuming that Audio Ape is the same thing. If no one was doing that after Craig had it with Pro Mystic, and then you said, okay, well, I could take those ideas and there's something new we can use then now. And did you use Craig's at all?
No.
Okay, you were.
No, I didn't use that. I bought one just so I could understand, and make sure, we were always better than their range. Or, I always
That's
wanted
the important
to compare.
thing is the range. Yeah,
it really is. And people were like, "Well, who needs 700 feet?" Well, guess what?
Yes, you do.
When you all of a sudden have to bury your stuff in the back booth, or when there is interference and it shows up, you're basically crippling your range down to 20% of what it should be. Now you really need that extra firepower. So I saw iOS was a big, all of a sudden everybody had in their hand or available to them this little touch device that you could build apps on. And so, and Carl built the app.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, we're just going to support that app. But then, of course, things change and, other apps come out and we help and support them. We never crossed any lines with Carl. We had an agreement that, we were going to help you out and make this remote.
He was really helping promote that. In fact, I did a podcast episode with him after it came out and he was really saying, Audio Ape is the way to go.
And we helped, promote his app too. So it was a lot of cross-pollination there. And then other apps were coming out. The Go button came out, QLab's iOS one, super powerful.
Because QLab's also does stuff on stage with smoke and fire and whatever else.
QLab is the end-all be-alls for our show automation. Now, we our new app, Audio 8 Pro, we try to straddle the space between QLab and being easy to use. So we're actually the only iOS app. Well, actually iQ, I do believe. Let me not step on Jamie's toes. Jamie's a great guy. But we are doing video, pictures, music, even triggering like OSC and lighting and a lot of smart cues that will change volume and things like that. So the new app is severely advanced and more so than any iOS has been. And it's free if you own Audio 8 Pro. It works with that seamlessly.
Yeah.
And you can try the app too. So you can download it and play with it and run your show with your finger. But then when you want a remote, our remote is the only one that's going to work with it.
Gotcha.
But we also support all the other apps, QLab. I mean, I personally myself run QLab. I don't run my own app because I have a very advanced show.
How many cues do you have in your show? In a 50-minute show? Well,
there's 16 routines. Each routine probably, if I'm including lighting stuff, they're probably going to have about average of 15 cues each, So you're looking at over 200 cues. But they're automated. I only push the button once, and then everything works on a timeline and just goes for the whole routine.
I see.
Yeah, it's not like I'm constantly
pushing your button. No. Yeah, pushing your pants. Okay.
No, I mean, the opening of the show is 5 minutes, and I only push the button once. Plays my opening reel, then my opening reel changes the lights, and then immediately goes into my first ball routine.
I guess it's just like doing a Dove routine or anything else, or an illusion show. You're going to the music. You know exactly what's going to be happening. Yeah. And so the cues, you build the cues, and they're all timed out, so they automatically fire at a certain time. You can supersede that and cancel it, but. And as you were saying, also, it's more than just audio because this will trigger the lighting and everything too.
Yeah, and our app can do that too, but QLab has just such a huge tool set and I use a lot of it. But we made an app for QLab. So and it's so funny, we're here in Charles Box Theater doing this interview, and it's just so cool to see my app right there on the edge of his sound booth.
That's true.
Yeah. I walked in and I was like, that's the app I made. And that I made completely free just for the community. I wanted it myself. That's a lot of the reason these things get birthed, but it's a really powerful tool for QLab. It wirelessly just set the iPad anywhere in the theater, and just be on the same Wi-Fi network as your QLab computer, and you can just see what's happening in real time. So
what is the website, or where can they go to get that app, or is this download from the
App Store called Lab Monkey?
Is it only available on
iOS?
So you can't have it on Android?
You can't have it on Android.
Okay.
And it's just we can control Android, our remote. So our remote works with Android. It works with any USB device. It can work with Windows. It can work with anything that has a USB socket. We can control it. And people, get upset about us not having a lot of options with Android. But the thing is, the uniformity of iOS and Apple is annoying as a consumer, especially as an advanced consumer, because you feel like you have handcuffs on you. But if you're running a show app, it's actually a positive because it's going to work the exact same way from one device to the next to another, to an iPad to an iPhone. It's going to have such a consistent behavior. And that's the most critical thing that you want is consistent behavior in your show software.
That's right. So
I still believe that Apple is the best place for show software because of that. But you can run anything you want. SLS Qs is an app it's supposed to be the equivalent or close to QLab for Windows. I've looked at it. I've never used it personally, so I don't know the stability of it, but it looks really good. And we can now absolutely work with that. And then some people, don't want to get an iOS device. And it's just like you bought a $850 remote, which is good investment. You can buy a used iPad for $150, but like they just don't want to touch Apple. It's Apple. I'm going to get,
well, that would lead me to a question then also for those people who don't use music in their shows. What would you say to them?
Oh, well, so that's the thing. And actually I'm doing a lecture here and I was, preparing my lecture notes and it was, I don't talk, I realized I should not talk at all about remotes and the software you use. I should talk about why
correct
you should use music and how
90% of the people don't.
How you use music and it goes back into that hypnotic trance. It's supposed to make it more immersive. Music is the sense, hearing is the sense that is mostly closely tied to emotion. Just watch a movie.
Sure.
And realize how often music is used and you don't even know it. It's happening in the underscore. It's happening in transition and it creates a mood in you that you don't even perceive. And you can do that with magic and you can do that with live performance. And it was funny too. Like I consulted for Copperfield. I was on the phone with him for about 45 minutes and we were talking about, he wanted to use the standalone player, the built-in music player in Audio 8 Pro, which a lot of people, it's becoming probably one of the most popular ways to use Audio 8 Pro. It's just that SD card and they don't want any other devices. So he wanted to crossfade into something else. I said, we really don't have that capability. He's like, well, why would somebody want to stop music during their show? And it made me realize if you go see a David Copperfield show, there's always an underbed.
There's something
that's
always
true. Music playing.
Just like a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's influenced by movies.
Yeah. And Broadway and all that traditional, media. So yeah. And it made me think, oh my gosh, there's so many ways to use music that I haven't been doing. So yeah, under bed while you're talking to create a mood, upbeat stuff when you go pick a volunteer to cover, some dead silence.
Right.
Imagine somebody going out and picking a volunteer to dead silence and imagine somebody going out picking it with background music.
That's why they usually say, let's give them a big round of applause because you're trying to kill some time of that dead time otherwise of a person walking up on stage. And so if you got some music that's kind of lively or whatever that fits the mood.
And we make it as simple as possible, to do that. You can use the standalone player. All you have to do is just plug it into whatever PA that it is, and then you're ready to roll.
So is that available on the website as well?
Yeah. Audio Ape Remote is our main website, and there we have the Audio Ape Pro. Yes, .com. And we have the Audio Ape Pro unit, and the unit is like a touch screen, and then that's the receiver, and then we have the transmitter that hides in your pocket. And basically you push the buttons on the transmitter and it talks to the receiver and reacts whatever you want it to react. You can either have it plugged into any kind of USB device and interact with show software, or it can be just standalone and have its own music player. And there's just some really great visuals and everything on there. And even high level performers like Colin McLeod and Michael Carbonaro, they use just the standalone player. I'm like, why? They're like, I want as little moving parts as possible. And I'm like, okay,
Sure.
And they're like, when I have a big show, I'll have my team with me.
Right.
But when I have an intimate corporate show or I have something where I need music, I just want as little moving parts as possible.
That's the way that I am, or used to be. I retired to work like I used to, but like on a cruise ship or when I was working the Magic Island back in the day and we had the sound booth back there, you'd run through a couple of rehearsals and they understand the music and everything. And when they know the cues and when to start that. But when I'm out doing a corporate show, doing an after dinner or something, I'm having to set up my own sound and everything. And so I would use show cues or MP3 tech or whatever it is. And so I'm operating that. And you do need to have that ability, I guess, to use it on your own because you don't always have the professionals that'll travel with you.
It's one of the biggest assets, in this business. For me, it's been a huge asset to be able to have a very tight, and it's not high production. I'm not like, some flame pots or anything. It's just, I use video, I use audio, and sometimes I control the lighting desk. I don't always. And actually, I don't. More often than not, I'm not.
Because you're not bringing your own lights all the time?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so I'm doing video and I'm doing audio. And I'm controlling some of my own props like the LED stuff and everything. But if you can come in and just do such a tight show and not use the resources of the tech team and always have a perfect show, that's so valuable. And you create a more immersive experience for the audience too, because you're using all these resources like the LED wall behind me and all these things.
Sure.
It ups your value and you can have satisfaction of doing a much better show and giving the audience a better experience. So that's the biggest, asset you're going to get with a show remote is being able to do that.
I don't think people understand that. Those who don't use music until you do it.
Until you do it, you don't get it.
Right.
You really don't. You're like, why am I? And then the other thing that is so common is like, well, why would I work extra when I have a sound guy? Like I always have a sound guy. It's just because it's not extra. It's like you say the line and you're hoping he's going to push it. Well, instead of saying a line, just push your finger. That's like,
you're more control that way.
Yeah. And there are some things that you can do when you're running your own show that you can't do when you have a sound guy. Like it's very subtle cues, or if you want to skip a routine, or if something breaks on stage and you can't do that routine, or if you have an uncooperative volunteer and you want him to get off stage, like none of that can be conveyed subtly to your sound guy.
That's true.
And he may not even understand what you're trying to say, or you have total autonomy, you have total control. And it's not extra thought, it's less thought.
For those who haven't ever used sound, I would implore them to at least try it. And let me also say, it doesn't have to be for a big show. I do a lot of shows for some corporate audiences in which I'm working for 2 boards of directors. They just had an IPO, and so they brought the 2 groups together, and there'll be like 16 or 20 people in there, and like in the wine cellar at Tony's in New Orleans or someplace, Anthony or Antoine's or something. And so, I still will use music, even though it's intimate with only a few people, and it adds more than just 10% to, it makes you seem much more professional as well.
It's very polished. It's
polished. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, just play on and play off. I have a guy that's like a Santa, and all he does is just use it for play on and play off music. He bought a $150 system for me just so he could have control of his play on and play off music, and that's it. That's all he uses it for, but that adds.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that I would recommend that there are some free apps that you can, well, yours is free then as well.
It's free too.
But there was one thing that Jamie Salinas had told me about. It's called Best Boy, and you can.
That's on Android.
Yeah, it's on Android.
That's the Android version of show cues, kind of.
Yeah.
And we control that too. So you can, and for goodness sakes, even if you don't have a remote, just get my free app and just use the app for free and plug it into a sound system and have somebody touch it, or touch it yourself and go on stage and have play on music at least. I don't know. It's just like, I just want to see, you don't have to invest money.
Just try it.
Yeah, just try it.
That's the bottom line. Well, as we close over here, the name of my podcast is called The Magic Word Podcast. And let me just say, we've covered a lot of territory over here, and I appreciate it. It's been fascinating. But I always like to ask what your magic word is. What is it that, and I don't mean like abracadabra, something that is important to you.
That's actually really, really,
how would you boil it down?
Yeah. Adaptability.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
That is true because of what you have done to adapt your show to, your skills to a show that
that's true. That's true too. But I think nowadays the rate of change is accelerating, whether it be, you got to be a content creator now, or whether it shifts in what the audience wants or what's cool and what's not. It seems like change is accelerating. Change has always been a constant in the world and the universe, but it seems to be accelerating. And you either adapt or you die. A lot of people wail at the wall and say, well, I don't want to do this. I don't want to change. And you're going to get left behind. Yeah. The train's going to leave, and you're going to be left at the station.
Or you're going to get run over by those who have adapted.
So
adaptability. Love it. Charles, thanks very much.
Anytime.
It's been just a wonderful chat, and I look forward to spending a little bit of time with you here this weekend.
I'm looking forward to it.
It should be some fun. So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Charles Peachock. This is Scotty out.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you again, Charles, for being my guest this week. That was really a lot of fun, and I hope everyone got a lot out of that. I'm sure you did. I mean, whether you use music or not, and particularly if you don't, I think this may have encouraged you to do just that. It's very important, whether it's close-up stage, small parlor acts, larger parlor acts, whatever you do, consider having your own music and you being in control of all the situations. Well, since it is the holiday season and people are still making some last-minute gift decisions, I want to remind you that if you're using Amazon, and I know you are because I've got an elf on the shelf who's watching you, even though you may not see it, and he's looking over your shoulder and seeing that you're actually using Amazon, but you're not always going through and clicking on the button that will take you to our Amazon affiliate page. So I want to remind you to do just that. If you'll go to themagicwordpodcast.com, scroll to the bottom of any of the pages, you'll see a banner there that says Amazon affiliate. Hit on that and you will actually go to your Amazon page and you can order whatever and we will get a few pennies back because of their affiliate program. That's one way that you can certainly help us. You can also help us by sharing this with others and by giving us a 5-star comment. That would be great on whatever platform you use to listen to this podcast. And of course, to subscribe to our weekly pod letter. We just send this out each week so you kind of keep up to date with what's going on and who's going to be on from week to week. We've got more guests coming up over the next few weeks and into the new year. And then we're going to be starting the convention season soon, going to Magi Fest and then to Blackpool. And oh goodness, then we're off to the races from there. So, until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember, adapt. This is Scotty out.